to successfully take two photos and compose them together and make them look like the lighting in the photo was taken in the same place, even though the lighting was different in both scenarios. So we're going to take this woman right here walking on the beach, and we're going to put her coming through this window. And this is going to be really challenging because the lighting in the sunset is very different. So we're going to use a couple of tools to be able to match that lighting to make it look like a cohesive composition. So first we need to isolate the woman. So there's a couple of quick tools we can do, like select, subject, which is in newer versions of Photoshop. Just like that, we were able to make a nice selection. Of course, there's so many different ways you can isolate and cut out objects, which I go over in that basic class where we can use the magnetic lasso tool, polygon lasso tool. There's even a new object selection tool, so let's use that one, which is basically what we just did when we did select, subject. This is a tool that basically takes that idea and makes it an active tool on your toolbar. So object selection tool, I can just draw a box, and it's going to automatically find the subject in the photo and do the selection. So that's the same thing as going to select, subject. So even if we had to use the pen tool to select her, or all sorts of different ways to select her, let's go ahead and just copy her, and let's paste her right into this document. So as you can see, this is going to be a huge challenge because her feet are in a different direction, her coloring is totally different. This is going to be a challenging project. So let's make sure the selection of her is cut out well. There's all sorts of little jagged edges. It didn't do a perfect job. So we can go ahead and do a layering mask. And as you know, with layering masks, when you paint on with black, it's going to remove. When you paint on with white, it's going to add. So we're going to decrease from her selection on the layering mask by painting on with black. We are going to do the soft round brush tool, and we're going to make it pretty small. We're just going to go around and clean up the selection. Okay, so let's see what we have here. We have her coming. So let's size her down because this is a pretty big frame door. It's probably 8 or 9 feet tall, and she's probably only 5 feet tall. So let's just make sure she's the right perspective. So what I want to do is I want to right click and I want to convert to a smart object, because anytime you're resizing photos, if you make it a smart object, it will be able to be scaled up and down without being rasterized or being pixelated. So anytime you're increasing or decreasing the size of a photo, make sure you convert to smart object. So right click, convert to smart object. Now I can go down and up as many times as I want, and the resolution will stay the original resolution of the photo. Let's try to get the right perspective and also the right stepping. So we can have her step onto the platform, which would be really great because we had those distorted toes that we don't have to worry about now, which is really great. So sometimes your placement is done because the way the feet are. See how her foot is pointed down? There's no way she can stand on a flat surface with this perspective. So we almost have to shift her down and make it look like she's stepping onto the area, just like this. So that's probably a great placement. We'll probably center her a little bit. So let's zoom out and see if we have the right size. We can make this a really big door, make it look like it's engulfing her, or make her just a little bit bigger, just like that. So now we need to make sure these two look like they belong together. So if we look at the original photo, let's take a look at the lighting. So the lighting is coming to the left. You can see the highlight hitting her hair. You can see the highlights in her dress. And you can also see the highlights on the sole of her shoe. So it's coming from the left. In this example, it looks like it might even be coming from the left as well. So you can see kind of how the sun is hitting this side, but it still looks like daytime over here. So we can make this work. Match these two photos is to adjust the curves on her to match kind of the curves in the background. So I don't go over curves a lot in my previous courses, so it's more of a photography thing. But hey, this is photography, so this is when we can really talk about curves. So there's one way we can add curves to a layer. So let's say this is our woman. Let's go ahead and title her woman. And I want to be able to add that adjustment to her. Before, I would just go to Image, Adjustments, go to curves, I'd be able to make a change, click on OK, and since my layer is already a smart object layer or a smart layer, when I make an adjustment, it'll automatically make it a smart filter, which is really great because I can just remove the filter at any time and it's not doing any permanent changes. You can also do adjustments panel here. Curves are also available on your adjustments panel. So whatever you feel comfortable selecting, they both do the same thing. Anytime I want to edit a filter, so let's say I put on curves, we can click on curves and double click. So this is the adjustment I made. Let's go ahead and bring it back here. So how curves works is you have, this is all the dark pixels to the left, and this is all the white pixels to the right. So this is kind of the distribution of light or dark to light pixels. So we can see we have a lot of pixels that are kind of darker, and that's probably where all this is coming from. And we have some that are a little bit lighter. So you can change the curves to bring out more of the lighter pixels or bring down the lighter pixels, and the opposite is true. You can use this curve to bring up those darker pixels and make them lighter. So this is where a lot of this can happen. So we're trying to change her, and she was from a very bright environment. So we might even want to darken some of her shadows to match the shadow that's coming behind her. So a way we could do that is kind of mess with the right or the left side where our darker pixels are going to be. We want to bring them down. So down is dark, up is light. So let's bring a few of these points down. So this is our brightest point of her. Let's see if we can't click and make a point and drag it down to change kind of the profile of those pixels to be a little bit darker. And also lighter pixels we can make lighter up at the top. And so you can see this natural S curve that happens because you're adding more contrast. You're making the brighter pixels brighter and the darker pixels darker. So you see this natural S curve is kind of the curves you'll naturally see when you're really trying to bring out contrast in a photo and exaggerate pixels. And you can see it doesn't take much to make a difference. And this is just for the RGB red, green, blue channels. You can also do red, green, and blue isolated. So let's say here's all the red pixels in the particular photo, and we want to bring them out a little bit because this is a sunset kind of photo. So this is where all of our red pixels are kind of more shadowy pixels, probably because their skin is kind of reddish because of the highlight. So let's just click on a point and see if we can't match our photo a little bit better. So just bringing out a little bit more of the red. And we could bring down the red in the lighter pixels if we wanted to, or make them even everything more red. Because she kind of had a little bit, so let's look at her green pixels because we don't want to have too much green in there. So let's see if we can't reduce some of that. And just go through each channel. So this is blue, so all of our blue pixels we can make the really bright ones darker. Down is dark, up is light. So blue may not need to be messed with too much. So just one way to kind of quickly match a photo is using those curves. So let's see what we had before. We can go back in our history panel. So this is what we had before, and this is after we did curves. So we took a lot of the greenness out, we added a little bit of red, and we kind of added more contrast by bringing up the dark pixels and bringing down the bright pixels. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the adjustments layer and how we can continue to make these smart filters instead of just permanently changing or altering the photo. So let's say I don't have a layer selected at all. If I add an adjustment, I don't have any layer selected, and let's say I wanted to mess with brightness and contrast. I could select a specific layer and add brightness and contrast to just that layer, but if I don't select one, and I click on brightness and contrast, it'll do it for both images. It'll do a brightness and contrast filter on top of both, which is great because I'm doing the same thing for both. It's going to really bring these photos together. So let's add, we could change our brightness, probably reduce the brightness a little bit and increase the contrast. And you can see how that can be toggled off and on or edited by clicking on the icon. We can also add some more here. Exposure has pretty big effects, so we don't need to ramp this up too much. So let's leave all that at 0. I just wanted to kind of go through all my adjustments and see if I can help match these. So let's delete that layer and it'll eliminate that entirely. So color balance, we can add more of dramatic sunset by adding in red, change to highlights, whatever. This is kind of more helping to match a little bit and getting a right color profile. I definitely don't like the blue-green. I kind of like more of the warmer tones. So you can see all these different adjustment layers being added on top. Just doing a selective color, and I'm selecting my reds. And you could change your reds to have less cyan, more cyan, less magenta, more magenta. You can select only specific colored pixels. And I find this really has a big effect on photography. I really like the use of selective color. And if you keep going down the list, you can even change blacks. Make the blacks darker, make the blacks lighter. Reduce the yellow. And this has a big effect because we have a lot of black in our photo. Okay, so not a whole lot of changes on that, but you can see these slowly blending together. If we go back in our history, this was before, and this is after. So you can see how those changes really help her become intimately involved in this photo. She's just not placed there, but now she has some of the same lighting characteristics on her.